Good morning and happy Saturday from Mahia, New Zealand, where our Electron rocket is ready on the pad at RocketLab's Launch Complex 1 as we count down to its 11:01 a.m. local time liftoff for today's mission. On board Electron today is our return customer Kinéis as we prepare to launch the second of multiple launches for them to deploy their Internet of Things constellation to space. My name is Prachi Saknani, and with me is Andrew Haig, and together we are live from Mission Control Center in Auckland, New Zealand for our 53rd Electron launch.
Well, thanks, Prachi. It's great to be back on the pad with Electron again so quickly after we stood down from our launch attempt earlier this week. Now, a ground system sensor triggered Electron's flight computer to safely halt the mission right on T0 for that last attempt. But with Electron, the launch pad, and Kinéis' payload all healthy and ready for another launch attempt, we're back on the pad and ready to try again today with greens across the board so far for our pre-launch operations.
Coming up shortly will be the go, no-go poll run by our launch director to check with each of the operators that their system is prepared and ready to continue the countdown to liftoff. We have operators, as you can see, in our Range Control Center and in our Mission Control Center on your screen. The go, no-go poll is scheduled to start at T-minus 12 minutes, so only with a few seconds left on the clock. Let's listen in to the audio channels for the update.
All stations LD on mission, proceeding with the go, no-go sequence. Stage?
Stage is go.
Avionics.
Avionics is go.
GNC.
GNC is go.
VCON.
VCON is go.
T1.
T1 is go.
GC.
GC is go.
PLS.
PLS is go.
RSO.
RSO is go.
MET.
MET is go.
MM.
MM is go.
And LDSUP.
LDSUP is go.
Okay, the go, no-go sequence is complete. We are T-minus 11 minutes, 19 seconds, and counting. We are go for terminal count auto sequence at T-minus 10 minutes. From this time, the 3-word hold procedure is in effect.
So good news there from today's launch operators. We're cleared to move forward with the final pre-launch operations. And today's mission requires an instantaneous launch for the satellites in order for them to be in the correct orbital parameters for the constellation they're joining. And that T0 is set for 23:01 UTC, which is 11:01 a.m. local time for today's liftoff.
In just 10 minutes and 35 seconds, Electron will be sending the Kinéis-killed the RadIOT Star mission to low Earth orbit for Kinéis, an international space-based solutions provider to improve global Internet of Things connectivity. This is our 53rd Electron launch overall, but our second for Kinéis this year, just 3 months after we launched them for the first time from Launch Complex 1. That mission launched our 50th Electron rocket, with the first 5 satellites of their new IoT constellation successfully deployed to their new home at 635 kilometers above Earth, just 66 minutes after liftoff.
Now, we'll be launching 5 missions overall with 5 satellites on board each time. And each launch is tailored specifically to Kinéis' mission requirements. That includes instantaneous launch windows, like for today's mission, but also a precise payload deployment, first with a single satellite and then in pairs to build out the constellation exactly as Kinéis needs it. Now let's hear more from the team at Kinéis.
Kinéis is a French company based in Toulouse. We are a satellite operator and a global connectivity provider dedicated to the Internet of Things. Mountains, ocean, deserts. 85% of our planet has no network coverage. In 2020, we raised a large amount of 100 million euros to address this global issue. Today, we are following through and will deploy a constellation of 25 nanosatellites that will enable us to connect to a multitude of objects anywhere on the planet in near real time. We are convinced that this transmission of information made possible by satellite connectivity will enable us to respond to crucial challenges for mankind, its activities and its environments. On the environmental front, for example, Kinéis connectivity can detect a fire outbreak in less than 15 minutes, thus considerably reducing the extent of the outbreak and reducing the loss of property and human life. The same goes for monitoring water levels to prevent flooding and use this dwindling resource. The applications are endless, whether for locating, monitoring, or alerting. Since the creation of Kinéis in 2018, our teams have been working with this objective in mind. Our 25 nanosatellites that weigh only 28 kilograms are real technological gems. The retractable UHF antenna, for example, can hear a bird sing within a rock concert 650 kilometers from the Earth. We fitted them with thrusters to ensure they stay on track for their mission. Some even carry children's drawings. That's amazing. At the same time, we have deployed many ground stations worldwide and have a sovereign infrastructure to guarantee data transmission to our clients. Today, RocketLab is preparing to launch a new cluster of 5 satellites, marking yet another significant step forward in our mission. With 5 satellites already in orbit at 650 kilometers, each launch reinforces our ability to connect with the rest of the world and address the challenges essential for people, their activities, and their environment. We can't wait to take this next step.
It is great to be counting down to another Kinéis launch. After today's mission, we have 3 more dedicated launches to build out their constellation. We are proud to be supporting Kinéis with flexible, tailored, and direct access to orbit on Electron.
Now, speaking of Electron, with just 7 minutes left on the countdown clock, it's time to take you through a closer look at the rocket and mission profile for launch. Now, today's Electron rocket is our standard platform orbital launch vehicle capable of lifting up to 320 kilograms of payload to space. Electron stands at 18 meters or 59 feet tall and is primarily made with a carbon composite material, which is why our rocket looks black when it's not fueled. Now, Electron is the world's first carbon composite orbital rocket powered by the world's first 3D printed battery-powered rocket engines to make it to space. And 9 of these Rutherford engines are located at the bottom of the rocket's first stage, and a single Rutherford engine with an expanded nozzle is used on the second stage. Now, all of the Rutherford engines across the rocket use batteries to power their turbopumps, and Electron performs a unique launch maneuver called a battery hot swap that happens part-way through the mission to replace the second stage engines' used-up batteries for new ones. Now, across the first and second stage, the engines use a propellant mix of kerosene and liquid oxygen, and it's that second propellant's super cold temperatures that make the outside of Electron look white, because that's where condensation has turned to ice. Now, without the propellants, Electron weighs in at just over 1,000 kilograms, but when the rocket is fully fueled, Electron weighs 13,000 kilograms.
At the top of the rocket within its fairing is where you'll find today's payloads of 5 satellites for Kinéis. As you can see, they're attached to the kick stage platform, from which they'll be deployed once they reach their destination. So, for today's mission, we are headed on a 643-kilometer orbit on a southern trajectory from Launch Complex 1. 2 seconds before T0, Electron's 9 Rutherford engines will ignite for liftoff, and the pad's hold-down mechanisms will be released, allowing Electron to travel upward for a short while before curving its path to continue its climb, but more horizontally. The rocket speed will continue to increase until it reaches max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure, just under 2 minutes from liftoff. Once it clears that first milestone, the next step in Electron's journey will be MECO. This main engine cutoff is when the first stage from the rocket shuts down and separates from the second, before the single Rutherford engine on stage 2 lights up to continue the mission to orbit. We'll have a repeat of that separation for stage 2 and the kick stage about 7 minutes later, and the kick stage will finish the mission by delivering Kinéis satellites to orbit. Once that's done, we'll also have the kick stage perform a perigee lowering burn that will help reduce these stages' orbital lifetime as part of our effort to keep space sustainable.
All right, so there's just 4 minutes 20 seconds remaining in the count to liftoff for Kinéis killed the RadIOT star. At T-minus 2 minutes, Electron's flight computer will take over the countdown and autonomously run through its final operations. A liquid oxygen will continue to flow into Electron all the way up to T-minus 1 minute and 30 seconds.
That's right, and after that, we'll hear confirmation that Electron's first and second stages are fully pressurized and ready for launch. And then it's over to our launch director, Michael Pearson, for the iconic 10-second countdown. For now, let's send it to Mission Control so they can send it to space, and we'll check back in with you after liftoff.
All stations LD on mission. From now, there should be no red flags on your critical LCCs. Beacon LD mission.
LD beacon.
Please lock auto sequence and confirm.
Auto sequence locked.
Confirm all expected primary flight computer ASGOs are green.
All ASCOs are green.
Okay, we are go for auto sequence start at T-minus 2 minutes. LD is go for launch.
The vehicle is fully on internal power. AFTS is green and enabled for flight.
LOX load is complete. System is in recirculation. Anti-geysering is disabled.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 tanks are pressed for flight. High flow engine purge enabled.
T-minus 20 seconds and counting. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
Stage 1 propulsion nominal.
T plus 35 seconds and counting, and we are well on our way to space. Our 53rd Electron rocket has taken flight, and it's headed to orbit with its payloads for Kinéis. Up next, you'll hear the call from max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure, the point in flight where Electron experiences peak structural load. The GNC operator on console will give us the call that max Q is approaching, and then we'll hear for confirmation that we have passed through that gate.
discharge is nominal.
Cleared max Q.
And there we have it. Confirmation Electron has passed through max Q. We are now at 19 kilometers altitude and traveling over 2,700 kilometers an hour. And next up, we have 3 key events: main engine cutoff, or MECO, stage separation, and stage 2 engine ignition. MECO is when all 9 Rutherford engines shut down to prepare for the next phase in flight. And after those engines shut down, Electron's first and second stages separate. Then finally, the vacuum-optimized Rutherford engine on Electron's second stage ignites to propel the mission through to an elliptical transfer orbit. Those 3 events all take place in a quick succession over just a few seconds, so let's listen in for those calls.
"15 seconds to staging.
Entered burnout detect mode.
MECO confirmed.
Stage separation confirmed.
Stage 2 ignition confirmed.
We are now T plus 2 minutes and 45 seconds into the mission, and as you've just heard, Electron has had a successful MECO, stage SEP, and second stage ignition.
Stage 2 guidance.
Telemetry data shows that Electron is now moving at over 8,200 kilometers per hour and has just passed 100 kilometers above Earth. Up next is fairing jettison, when Electron's nose cone, which is protecting our payloads today, will split in two and fall away. We might see this happen on screen, so let's keep an eye out for that.
Fairing jettison succeeded.
And that was the call out for fairing jettison from mission control, exposing the payload to space ahead of deployment.
Stage 2
Electron is traveling at over 8,500 kilometers an hour at an altitude of 125 kilometers, with just a few minutes remaining in the second stage burn.
Now, if you take a look at the graph on the right-hand side of your screen, then you can see Electron's current trajectory compared with our expected trajectory. And we like those two lines to be as close as possible, and that's what helps Electron's precise payload insertion accuracy.
HV discharge nominal.
Some of you may be wondering how IoT satellites impact your daily lives. These satellites connect devices globally, even in areas without regular internet. In day-to-day life, this means you can track deliveries worldwide and carry out credit card transactions, even if you're stranded in the middle of the South Island of New Zealand. They also support things like your smart home assistant or fitness watch, allowing them to stay connected anywhere for real-time updates or alerts.
Now, one of the things that sets Electron apart from many other rocket designs is the use of electric pumps in the Rutherford engines. And those pumps are powered by batteries, which deplete in power throughout the flight. Once we use up all the available energy in one set, we'll switch to a fresh battery to complete the mission all the way through to orbit. And that maneuver is referred to as the battery hot swap. Now, after the first set is depleted, Electron won't need those batteries for the remainder of the journey, so we jettison the depleted batteries to save mass in the final stages of flight. That's coming up soon, so keep an eye on your screen and see if you can see the shiny silver batteries eject and fall away.
HV discharge nominal, approaching hot swap.
Throttling down.
Battery jettison confirmed.
And that was the call for battery hot swap on the second stage, confirmed as successful by Mission
Hot swap
Control
successful.
across the nets. Up next is the final stage of Stage 2 flight, including SECO, or second engine cutoff, followed by kick stage separation. This is where the kick stage, carrying the 5 Kinéis satellites, separates from Electron's second stage. That final engine cutoff is coming up just shy of 9 minutes, so only about 3.5 minutes to go.
Stage 2
Yes,
propulsion
saved.
holding nominal.
Now, electric pumps on Rutherford offer other advantages other than just a simplification of design. Now, these groundbreaking pumps can run the tanks all the way dry, allowing the second stage to squeeze every last bit of performance out of it during flight. And those pumps on Electron's second stage are currently powering us at speeds of over 19,000 kilometers an hour.
Some keen watchers from Flight 50 will remember some fun flips and rotations the kick stage performed during payload deployment for the last Kinéis mission. The kick stage's reaction control thrusters achieved this by expelling precise amounts of cold pressurized gas through small thrusters to rotate the kick stage and control its orientation and position in space. It's this system that's responsible for our industry-leading deployment precision.
It's now T plus 8 minutes 18 seconds, and we're fast approaching second engine cutoff. And just before that happens, the Rutherford engine will begin to throttle down in preparation for shutdown, which is scheduled to take place around 9 minutes into the mission. So let's listen in and wait for that confirmation.
SECO confirmed.
Stage 3 separation confirmed. Nominal count
Great
for
news
orbit
there from
achieved.
Mission Control. The second stage engine has shut down and the kick stage has separated and is about to enter a coast phase for around 45 minutes. At the end of that coast, the Curie engine on the kick stage will ignite 2 times to complete some final positioning maneuvers. The first will circularize our orbit to 643 kilometers, and the second will slightly lower our perigee at the customer's request.
Now, around a minute after the completion of that final burn, the Kinéis satellites will be deployed in sequence. First, a single satellite will be deployed off the top of the kick stage, followed by the remaining 4 satellites deployed in pairs from opposing sides. Now, payload deployment is scheduled to take place just 55 minutes from now, so we're going to take a short break while the kick stage coasts around to the opposite side of the planet. We'll see you back here soon.
Welcome back to the launch of Kinéis kills the RadIOT star, our 53rd Electron launch. Just over an hour ago, Electron lifted off from Pad A at Launch Complex 1 in New Zealand, carrying 5 satellites for French IoT company Kinéis. The satellites are now just minutes away from being deployed to their final positions in space. The Kickstage's Curie engine is performing 2 burns today, and while we were on our break, we've already had our first ignition and cutoff. This Curie burn lasted about 2.5 minutes to round out our orbit from its 643-kilometer apogee. We've mentioned Curie a few times this launch, and we've talked about our small but mighty engine prior to liftoff. But just how small is it? Well, check it out here.
Now, named after physicist Marie Curie, this extremely small engine is capable of some very big maneuvers. We've flown this engine on all but our first mission, and it allows us to raise and lower our orbits, perform plane changes on orbit, and it's responsible for our pinpoint payload deployment accuracy. Now, this version we have here is the Curie Mark III, and it's not just used on Electron's kick stage. This engine is used on a lot of our spacecraft missions as well. The Mark III engine used here is in the satellites that we're building for Varda's in-space pharmaceutical manufacturing, and we flew a variant of this engine to the moon back in 2022 as part of the Capstone mission for NASA.
With only a few more milestones left in this mission, the second Curie burn comes next, lasting just 8 seconds. This is a slight orbit adjustment specific to our customer's mission before the deployment sequence begins. The satellites will deploy approximately 45 seconds apart, starting with the forwardmost satellite.
Curie ignition confirmed. Curie engine cutoff confirmed.
Great news there to have Curie engine shutdown confirmed by mission control for the kick stage. Now up next is our last mission milestone, the payload deployment for the next 5 satellites for Kinéis' constellation. Each Kinéis satellite is a 16U platform weighing about 30 kilograms or 66 pounds. And as we've mentioned already, the 5 satellites currently attached to the kick stage will be deployed in a particular order. We'll first deploy the top spacecraft as the first event, and then we deploy the next 2 satellites that are attached opposite to one another on the payload structure. And finally, we'll do the same thing again with the last 2 spacecraft. Between deployments, the kick stage does some neat gymnastics thanks to our reaction control thrusters, so keep an eye over on the animation for that, and over now to mission
Nominal
control.
final orbit.
Kinéis, payload 1, deployment confirmed.
And there it is, deployment of Kinéis 1, the first satellite on this mission, is now on orbit. Our reaction control system, or RCS, will expel some cold gas to change our orientation so we can deploy the next 2 exactly where they need to be. That'll be Kinéis 2 and 4, followed by Kinéis 3 and 5.
Kinéis, payload 2 and 4, deployment confirmed.
Stellar news there from Mission Control. Kinéis 2 and 4 have been deployed and are now on orbit. Now one more Olympic level flip for the kick stage, and then final deployment for this mission. Kinéis satellites 3 and 5 up next.
Kinéis, payload 3 and 5, deployment confirmed.
And And there we have it. The final two Kinéis satellites, 3 and 5, are now deployed. Mission success for Kinéis kills the RadIOT star. Welcome back to orbit for our customers. Electron has added another 5 satellites to space for the Kinéis constellation. We have another 15 satellites to go across 3 more Electron missions to complete the build-out of Kinéis' constellation, and we cannot wait.
And we'll be back again in no time with the next Electron on the pad, so stay tuned to our social media channels for mission updates on the next launch. For now, though, we'll wrap up today's broadcast and see you back here soon. Thanks for joining us. This is RocketLab Mission Control, signing off.
Trunk separated, Dragon will be running entirely on battery power. Then next up will be the deorbit burn. This will be the last time that we use the forward bulkhead thrusters located under the nose cone, and after that we will close and lock the nose cone in preparation for reentry. Now today the deorbit burn will last roughly 7 minutes, and the deorbit burn is what will line Dragon up for reentry into Earth's atmosphere.
Nitrox is used to cool the cabin and the spacesuits to keep the crew comfortable during reentry. This is the same type of breathable gas sometimes used in scuba diving. Next, we'll have nose cone closure, and that nose cone, of course, is what covers those forward hatch thrusters, which we use in the deorbit burn, and also protects that portion of the spacecraft during reentry. Now, during reentry, we will have an expected loss of communication with Dragon for about 7 minutes, and that happens as Dragon passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. We expect to regain communication around 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time, although timing is not always exact.
Now, after we regain communication with Dragon, about 2 minutes will pass before the drogue parachutes deploy. These are the 2 smaller parachutes that are designed to stabilize Dragon and slow it down before the release of the main parachutes. Less than a minute after the drogue parachutes deploy, we'll see the release of the 4 main parachutes. These are the big orange and white parachutes that further slow down the spacecraft. Over the course of 3 minutes, the drogues and the mains will work together to bring the vehicle's velocity down from 350 miles per hour down to just about 15 miles per hour.
And once it's time for our crew to deorbit and splash down back on planet Earth, they'll be heading to one of 7 targeted sites supported by SpaceX. All of these are located...
Dragon SpaceX, deorbit sequence start in 5 minutes.
Copy that, SpaceX. We show the same.
All right, so just a call out there from the core down here in SpaceX Mission Control. That is the view that you're looking at now. And that was just letting the crew know that they're going to begin the deorbit burn in 5 minutes. It's always good to keep the crew informed of timelines so that they can expect those events. Now, for recovery, all of the sites are located off the coast of Florida, basically either in the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. Spreading the supported sites across multiple locations helps to maximize return opportunities for this mission and for future crews, lowering the chance that we'll have to wave off due to bad weather. Now, in a wave-off scenario, Dragon would remain in orbit until the next landing attempt.
Since Dragon is capable of splashdown on either side of the Florida Panhandle, we have 2 identical and fully equipped recovery vessels ready to support, one in the Gulf of Mexico and the other in the Atlantic Ocean. SpaceX selected primary and alternate splashdown locations off the coast of Florida for tonight's splashdown, working with a lot of different variables, including what landing sites are available and have favorable weather. Dragon has the capability to execute a unique series of orbit-lowering maneuvers using its Draco thrusters to line up its ground track for each primary location and maintain the capability to change alternate sites in free flight as weather constraints dictate.
At certain milestones during the mission, the SpaceX team evaluates the forecasted weather conditions at the primary and alternate splashdown sites in order to determine if they are go or no-go. Splashdown and recovery. For return, they will be looking at a number of weather items. Some of the obvious ones are no rain or no chance of lightning in the recovery zone, both for the safety of not just the crew inside the capsule, but also the recovery teams out in the water. They're also looking for wind speeds less than 15 feet per second, or about 10 miles per hour, and relatively calm seas, so we can safely execute recovery operations, which includes landing a helicopter on the recovery ship to fly the crew back to Florida.
For these operations, SpaceX closely coordinates with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone to ensure public safety and for safety of those involved in the recovery operations, as well as the crew on board the returning spacecraft. Multiple notices are issued to mariners in advance and during recovery operations, and Coast Guard patrol boats are deployed to discourage boaters from entering the splashdown zones. Now, we want to stress to the public the need to respect this safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation. Any other boats interfering increases risk to the astronauts in the capsule, the teams working to recover them from the water, and the safety of those that come too close. So for the safety of the crew and your safety, we recommend you sit back and watch as we'll be bringing you the best possible views of our astronauts coming home right here.
In the next phase of the mission, Dragon has a series of steps to complete before returning our crew home. First, Dragon will jettison its trunk, which is the cylindrical, unpressurized part of the spacecraft. The trunk is currently connected to the aft or bottom section of the Dragon capsule, where the heat shield is located. So, in order to expose that heat shield and get the vehicle ready for atmospheric entry, we'll jettison the trunk.
From there, the spacecraft will use its forward thrusters to perform a deorbit burn, which will put Dragon on a trajectory to return to Earth and our splashdown location at Dry Tortugas off the Florida Keys. This burn will last about 7 minutes once it starts. And to prepare for these upcoming events,
Dragon SpaceX, we do have a TDRS handover around claw SEP and trunk SEP, so I'll make sure to formalize all calls after the TDRS handover. This is in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, copy that, SpaceX. We're tracking.
and just some comms there from the ground to the crew to let them know that during the TDRS handover, we will lose some communication. So they're just informing them ahead of time, and they'll make sure that they'll communicate the comms after they gain communications back with the crew. So to prepare for these upcoming events, right now the Dragon capsule is doing a couple of things autonomously. One of these steps includes isolating the thermal control system fluid loops from the radiator. This system is what will help keep the internal temperature of Dragon temperate for
deorbit sequence start.
Copy that, SpaceX. We show the same.
Great news, the deorbit sequence has begun. Again, this system is what will keep the internal temperature of Dragon temperate for the crew during reentry. Dragon is also initiating separation of the claw mechanism, which will terminate data, power, and fluid connections between the capsule and the trunk. So that's a pretty exciting milestone. Basically, we have the trunk attached to Dragon for the duration of the mission. That provides power to the Dragon capsule and the crew. But once it's separated, now they're going to be ready to come back home, back down to Earth.
Yeah, and all of these kind of, while they are choreographed and spaced out, they happen quite quickly. So I'm sure that the crew on board Dragon, they've been in orbit for 5 days now. It's going to go by in a blink of an eye for them, most likely, and they'll be back here on planet Earth. Now, some information about Dragon for those who have not tuned into our Dragon missions previously. From the beginning, SpaceX designed the spacecraft for human spaceflight. While it can carry up to 7 passengers, right now it's only carrying 4. And it is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the International Space Station. In fact, this exact capsule that our Polaris Dawn crew is flying in first went to, or its first mission was the Crew 1 mission, and it went to the International Space Station. Oh, and look, our first views of the crew this morning inside Dragon Resilience. On your far left side of the screen is mission specialist Anna Menon. She is also the medical officer on board for this mission. To her left, or our right, is our pilot Scott Kidd Poteet. To the right of Kidd is Jared Isaacman. He's the commander of the Polaris Dawn mission. And on the far right side, at the other window seat, is other mission specialist Sarah Gillis. Both Anna and Sarah are our SpaceX co-workers, and it's been such a joy to watch them experience spaceflight through their eyes as SpaceX employees who, in their day job, have helped train other astronauts for their human spaceflight missions. And so it's just so incredible to see Sarah and Anna now having their own spaceflight.
Yeah, I still can't believe it. We got to see and talk to them this morning, and it was just so cool to see our SpaceXers on the other side floating in space. And I love the space hair. That was probably my favorite part.
Oh, of course. So we are anticipating our Polaris Dawn crew to return and splash down about 12:36 a.m. Pacific time or 3:36 a.m. Eastern time. And they are splashing down off the coast of Florida. And we're very much looking forward to getting them home. I have ordered a copy of Anna's book, and I will definitely be asking her to sign it when she gets back.
Oh, I definitely ordered one as well.
SpaceX nominal trunk jettison.
Copy that, SpaceX. We show the same and felt the same.
All right, good news there. We just heard that the trunk has been jettisoned or separated, which is great news. Like we were saying before, we had to basically unconnect with the trunk in order to expose the heat shield, which is the most important thing when it comes to re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. And we're doing that trunk separation now so that the trunk and the capsule don't return together in the same trajectory. So good news there that the trunk is now jettisoned.
Yeah, exactly. So that means that telemetry is looking good. The nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling. And again, the heat shield is exposed and ready for atmospheric reentry. Now, Dragon will slew, or what we call maneuver, itself into the correct position to deorbit. To do the deorbit burn here in just a few minutes. Now, for the deorbit burn, this is the last time that the forward Dracos, which are the 4 thrusters located on top of the vehicle, will ignite. The deorbit burn will place Dragon on a precise trajectory to return to the splashdown zone off Dry Tortugas in the Florida Keys and will last about 7 minutes long. Dry Tortugas is a new landing location for Dragon that our teams activated in a couple weeks just prior to the Polaris Dawn mission's launch earlier. This is the first time that we will be returning Dragon to the Dry Tortugas splashdown site, which is pretty exciting.
I was personally very excited to hear this because I did a presentation about Dry Tortugas National Park when I was in middle school. So I knew exactly where they were going when I heard the name.
Full circle moment there.
Indeed. So we were talking a little bit about the different burns that the Dragon capsule does in orbit in order to deorbit and return to Earth safely. There are 16 Draco thrusters used to orient the spacecraft throughout the mission, including apogee and perigee maneuvers, as well as orbit adjustments and attitude control. For the deorbit burn, that only fires 4 of the Draco thrusters on the perimeter of the nose cone, basically located around the Skywalker that we saw in action during the EVA. And it was incredible to see that, but it's those 4 Draco thrusters that we saw there that are basically going to be doing all of the work for this deorbit burn. Each Draco thruster is capable of generating 90 pounds of force in the vacuum of space. And it's pretty cool to see them in action. We actually saw some video captured while they were doing some orbital adjustments earlier in the week posted to X that I just thought were so cool because you also got to see some earthly lights from the ground in the background as well.
Oh, yeah. The views from this mission were incredible. We got to see a lot of things that we've never seen before, especially with the Skywalker at the top of Dragon. That's the same location as where those 4 Draco thrusters are, but just a new mobility aid that they were able to use during the spacewalk. Just a lot of cool firsts on this mission this week.
Indeed. It has been a long week, that is for sure. It seemed like every day there was action happening, and we're super excited that they're going to be coming back soon and share more of their experience with us when they're on the ground. Once again, this view is looking inside of Dragon Resilience. It is making its making its way back to Earth. We can see some minor movements there with the straps and
still floating around.
Yeah, so they're making their way back to Earth again. They are going to be splashing down off the coast of Florida. We anticipate that splashdown around 3:36 a.m. Eastern Time. There are a couple of events that are still coming up. We're going to close the nose cone. That will help protect the forward hatch during re-entry. And it also means that we will not be using the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters any longer. Basically, this deorbit burn is the last time that those will be utilized.
Yeah, and we are expecting that deorbit burn any minute now. And again, that's going to help put Dragon on the trajectory towards the splashdown zone. And again, as a reminder, they are still currently in space in orbit and have not re-entered the Earth's atmosphere just yet. That's what this deorbit burn is going to help them adjust to that trajectory, and then they will perform the entry of Dragon back into Earth's atmosphere.
Clearly, Anna is savoring the last few minutes of her microgravity experience. And that deorbit burn is in progress. It's about a 7-minute burn. Once again, this helps to put the Dragon capsule into the correct into the correct trajectory for its landing. This deorbit burn is the last time that we use those 4 forward Draco thrusters for this mission.
Entered Earth's atmosphere just yet. This deorbit burn is what lines the vehicle up and puts it on its final trajectory to the landing site near Dry Tortugas off the Florida Keys. Now, right now, the crew are using their screens until the deorbit burn termination. That's because they want to monitor this because they are going to hear a lot of different sounds with the burns going on. So Dragon is currently flying free itself, and so all the crew has to do is stay strapped into their seats and keep an eye on things. And there you can see the screen and some cool new stickers there.
Great Scott.
I love that.
I love to see how they add their own personality, like just right there in the middle, that 1.21 gigawatts, obviously referring to Back to the Future. It is worth noting that that Jared has actually flown in this capsule in the commander controller seat once before as he was the commander of the Inspiration 4 mission. Just a quick note here, these are those Draco thrusters at the forward bulkhead, as well as the Skywalker mobility aid that we saw tested out during the extravehicular activity, or EVA. It seems almost sad and heartbreaking to not see, a person hanging out there. Those views were just so incredible that seeing an empty forward hatch just...
We'll come back.
Yeah.
We'll come back. We'll do it again. But what an incredible spacewalk we had earlier this week, and just some cool views that we had there from the nose cone looking back down on Earth. And again, as we mentioned, the crew is using their displays just to monitor. Dragon is fully autonomous, so it's doing all these maneuvers on its own, and the crew's just watching, monitoring, making sure they know when the burn is going and when it's going to conclude and how much time is left. And we do just have a few more minutes. Again, this deorbit burn, they're currently in the deorbit burn, and this burn should last just about 7 minutes, and we're about halfway through at this point.
I love this view here. So just for a little bit of frame of reference, on the left side of the screen is Commander Jared Isaacman, and the right-hand side of the screen is pilot Scott Poteet, although he prefers to go by his call sign Kid. And I think that this is such a great view because it really gives you an idea of what they are looking at, in addition to the tablets that they have strapped onto their legs. You can see the procedures that they are following along with, as well as the display that illustrates which Dracos are firing at what point. Now, this deorbit burn is still underway. I'm going to pull up the map real quick, but it looks like that might be Australia. Yeah, according to our Dragon tracker, that